Revealed. 3 spine-chilling and sinister true spring horror tales that will haunt your nights. Jessica felt it in the air, an unsettling weight that tangled with the scent of blooming flowers in Maplewood. Mothers chatted in the park, hollow laughter echoing beneath the cherry blossoms, while children played, unknowingly brushing against shadows lurking close by. What had been a peaceful neighborhood was now a breeding ground for dread. Whispers flitted like moths around flickering streetlights, carrying rumors of missing kids and broken promises. Jessica couldn't shake the feeling. Something sinister stalked the sunny streets of her once safe haven. The Johnsons, normally friendly, were slipping into their house after dark, faces drawn taut and pale. Mrs. Peterson's garden, once a riot of color, shriveled before her eyes overnight. It was all inexplicable, a nightmare unraveling in the thin veneer of tranquility. Each evening, after a grueling shift at the hospital, Jessica gathered her kids, Oliver and Mia, and tried to ignore the gnawing anxiety creeping into her gut. But how could she, when kids simply disappeared from the local park, faces etched with fright before their laughter turned silent? Just as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and kink, Jessica stumbled over the ragged remnants of the old neighbor's fence. A trapdoor lay hidden beneath twisted roots, its rusty handle groaning as it yielded to her touch. Heart racing, she gazed into the dark abyss, a chill snaking through her spine. What lay beneath the rotting wood and layers of dirt? Was it the truth she sought, or a fresh hell? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Days bled into one another, filled with mounting dread and nightmares punctuated by Mia's increasingly rebellious outbursts. Then the nightmare ripped wide open. The annual spring festival, a tapestry of joy, twisted into a scene of horror when Mia went missing. Panic twisted Jessica's insides as she scoured playgrounds and shadowy corners. Her heart nearly stopped as she sensed watchful eyes in the dark, judging her frantic search. Approaching the police, she only met rolling eyes and dismissive words. To them, she was a frantic woman lost in gossip, a mere alarmist. But as she pressed deeper into her quest, an unexpected ally emerged. Mr. Thomas, the neighborhood eccentric who lived alone in a house brimming with oddities. Unearthing the sinister history of Maplewood from old records, a chilling tale unfolded. A legend of unseen guardians watching over the neighborhood, spiraling into horror when their duty twisted into something grotesque. Jessica's spine tingled, the weight of uncovered truths suffocating her. With each revelation, the fabric of normalcy unraveled, whispers among her neighbors growing louder, the facade of safety cracking beneath the strain. And just as she fought to piece together the puzzle, a shadow darted from her neighbor's porch, the door slamming shut with a finality that reverberated in her veins. Jessica's heart thundered, panic clawing at her. Was she really too late to save Mia? As night swallowed Maplewood in its deepening embrace, dread pulled at her heart. What truth lay buried beneath the facade of everyday life, and would she be brave enough to face it? Darkness thickened around Maplewood, the fading light casting twisted shadows that danced like ghosts beneath the gnarled trees. Jessica stood frozen, breath hitching in her throat. The sudden closure of her neighbor's door echoed in her mind, a sonorous finality that left her trembling. The air was thick, charged with an electricity that prickled her skin and sent her heart racing. "Mia," she called, desperation lacing her voice. The silence swallowed her plea, and for a moment it felt as if the entire neighborhood held its breath alongside her. Mr. Thomas's revelations lingered, a chilling argument against the very fabric of the world she knew. Unseen guardians? What did that even mean? It was madness. Yet with every rumor that floated through the town, every hushed conversation she overheard, it edged closer to reality. She had to dig deeper. She had to find Mia. Jessica stepped toward the shadowy porch, her resolve hardening. She could either stand there, paralyzed by fear, or fight against the dark forces encroaching upon her family. Her hand latched instinctively onto the cold handle of the trapdoor, a gateway to answers or horrors. With a sharp tug, she pulled it open, revealing the yawning void below. A damp, musty scent wafted up, mingling with the fragrant blossoms above. Dim twilight streamed in, revealing nothing but a staircase caked in layers of dust and treachery, leading down into the unknown. A bright lantern flickered dimly at the bottom, its light beckoning her like a siren's call. Clutching her phone for light, Jessica descended the creaking steps, each one a reminder of her every heartbeat, a race against time. The walls dripped with moisture, and she shuddered at the thought of what might be lurking in the shadows. A single thought pulled her forward: Mia. Reaching the bottom, she was met with a narrow corridor lined with bizarre objects, old toys, discarded clothes, photographs of smiling families that felt too eerily familiar. They were children, laughing and playing, missing children. A wave of nausea rolled through her. It felt as if these things were alive, watching her with hollow, accusing eyes. Suddenly, a noise cut through the darkness. A rustling sound, echoing from the end of the hall, quickened her pulse. Was it Mia? Whatever sense of bravery she had summoned faltered as dread gripped her. She edged forward, heart pounding, fear coiling in her stomach. The corridor opened into a dimly lit room, filled with forgotten items and half-opened boxes. And there, in the corner, a small figure sat, hunched over, drawing something frantically. Mia? Jessica's voice trembled as she stepped closer, heart leaping in hope. But when the child turned, the joy quickly drained from her face. It wasn't Mia. The child's face was drawn and gaunt, eyes wide with fear and coated in shadows. "You shouldn't be here," the child whispered, voice trembling. Before Jessica could respond, the room darkened, the whisper of fabric brushing across the floor. She spun around, catching sight of a tall figure lurking in the shadows. Cloaked and menacing, it seemed to swell and contract with the gloom of the room. "Mia!" she breathed, heart racing. In that terrified moment, a different realization settled cold and heavy upon her. The guardian wasn't there to protect. It was there to claim. Suddenly, the figure lunged, and Jessica's scream echoed, swallowed by the darkness. What awaited her in the depths below? Would she uncover the truth, or become another shadow in the tales of Maplewood? Jessica stumbled back as the figure lunged, heart hammering against her ribs like a frantic drummer. Shadows twisted together, shrouding the room in a black veil. She barely had time to react before cold fingers grazed her wrist. The touch was like ice, numbing, paralyzing her very will to fight. "No! Get away from me!" she shouted, but the words fell into the abyss, drowned by an oppressive silence. The figure drew closer, revealing a visage half hidden beneath a tattered hood. Jessica's breath caught as dim light flickered upon its face, pale and sunken, as if it had been pulled from the depths of some long-forgotten grave. There were no features, just a hollow cavity where eyes should have been, an empty void that seemed to absorb the light around it. She turned, desperate, ready to flee. The narrow corridor seemed longer than before, a prison constructed from her own fear. She sprinted past the child, still huddled in the corner, its eyes wide and pleading. "You don't know what it wants! You need to leave!" it cried, but Jessica was already moving, her lungs burning from panic. The creature was faster. A cold draft brushed against her neck as it pursued her, whispers clawing at her sanity. "You belong to us," it murmured, voice thick like fog, wrapping around her mind. Bursting into the corridor, Jessica skidded to a halt. She fumbled with her phone, desperately tapping the screen to find a way out. But the flickering light cast grotesque shapes that twisted along the walls. In that moment, she realized. The artifacts lining the corridor were not just remnants. They were a testament to the souls lost here, children who had somehow failed their escape. She felt heat rising in her chest, the urge to scream, to reclaim her life echoing in the chambers of her heart. "Mia!" The name slipped from her lips again, raw and desperate. It had to work. She had to believe it would summon her sister back to her. With each step back, the shadow seemed to gain strength. Frighteningly long arms stretched toward her, fingers like talons that twisted into forms far too familiar. They clawed at her resolve, breaking her focus. She pivoted toward the stairs, her only path left, but the shadow filled the space before her, dark and infinite. "No!" With a sudden rush of adrenaline, Jessica pushed against the terror, breaking free. She dashed toward the trapdoor, her fingers trembling with fear as she jabbed at the handle. The creature lunged once more, the force of its weight crashing against her back, shoving her forward into the open air. With a desperate leap, she vaulted into the stairwell, tumbling down the crooked steps as the lantern's flicker dimmed behind her. The light began to fade, the sounds of the creature muffled but persistent, clawing at the edges of her mind. She landed hard, breath knocked from her with a gasp, and looked around. The hallway at the bottom was eerily quiet, but there was no comfort. The shadows shifted, coiling with a life of their own, and the air thickened with a suffocating weight. Had she truly escaped, or was this merely the beginning of something darker? Choking back fear, she pulled herself upright. "Mia, where are you?" She choked on the name, heart wrestling with dread. A chill slithered up her spine as the room seemed to pulse, shadows dancing in the corners. And then she heard it, a faint whisper, soft like a breeze, yet heavier than lead. "Help." Jessica's blood ran cold. It was Mia's voice, fragmented and desperate. But where? She barely had time to catch her breath before the heavy door at the far end of the hall creaked open with an agonizing slowness. Something waited behind it, something that wanted her. What lay beyond that door? Would she be able to find her sister, or would the darkness consume her first? Jessica held her breath, the sudden creak of the door slicing through the thick silence like a blade. It swung open, revealing only darkness beyond, a void that seemed alive and hungry. The air grew colder, and she could feel the shadows reaching hungrily, curling around her as if welcoming her into their abyss. "Mia!" she cried, her voice shaking with desperation. Each syllable echoed against the oppressive walls, swallowed by the enveloping void. The whisper came again, softer this time, floating toward her from the depths. "Help! Please!" The urge to rush forward was overwhelming, but dread rooted her in place. What if Mia was not alone? What if something lurked in the darkness, waiting to ensnare her as it had the others? Still, she could not abandon her sister, not while there was breath left in her lungs. Grating her teeth, Jessica took a cautious step toward the door. The light from the hallway flickered, casting eerie shapes that danced around her. The temperature dropped further, and the air thickened with an unfamiliar scent, something rotten, as if decay had taken up residence here. "Mia!" she shouted, more forceful now, willing her voice to cut through the suffocating gloom. "I'm coming for you!" With that, she crossed the threshold, plunging into the darkness. Her heart pounded like thunder in her ears, each beat screaming at her to turn back, but her sister's voice propelled her forward, a beacon in the desolation. The door slammed shut behind her with a resentful thud, plunging her into total darkness. Panic gripped her, but she remembered the flashlight app on her phone. Fumbling with trembling fingers, she activated it. A narrow beam cut through the oppressive black, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. The room was small, a forgotten space cluttered with debris, a broken rocking chair, peeling wallpaper, and photos hanging crooked on the walls. They showed faces she didn't recognize, children smiling and laughing, unaware of the fate that would haunt them. "Mia?" Jessica called again, forcing her voice to cut against the shadows pressing in. Where was her sister? Suddenly, the air vibrated. A low, sinister hum resonated in the room, as if the darkness had grown sentient. Jessica's eyes darted around frantically, searching for any sign of movement. Her heart felt like a drum, pounding to a rhythm of terror. From the corner of her eye, she caught a flicker, a movement. "Mia!" She turned the beam toward it, and her breath caught in her throat. There, in the far corner, stood a figure, small and slight. The familiar tousled hair and worn yellow dress sent a rush of warmth through her. "Mia!" She rushed forward, relief breaking through her fear. But as she reached for her sister, the child turned slowly. The face was twisted, hollow eyes staring through Jessica's soul, the smile frozen in a grimace. It was not Mia. "No," Jessica gasped, stumbling back. The humming intensified, filling her with dread as the walls seemed to shudder. The illusion flickered like a faulty light bulb. Shadows loomed larger, taking form, revealing more twisted shapes behind the remnants of the facade. "Help!" The voice whispered again, deeper now, many voices merging into one. "You belong here." Jessica backed away, heart racing, her mind racing to process the horrors unfolding around her. She felt the walls closing in, constricting her breath. They were calling for her, the lost ones, the forgotten. With a final burst of courage, she turned and bolted toward the door, fumbling for the handle. But it wouldn't budge. Panic clawed at her mind as the whispers crescendoed into a cacophony of wails, clawing at her sanity. Shadows reached for her, wrapping around her limbs like chains. She thrashed against them, desperation fueling her fight, every muscle straining against the pull of darkness. Then she glimpsed it, a glimmer of gold, a small key, lying forgotten on the floor. She could almost hear Mia's voice intertwining with the cries around her, urging her forward. Could she reach it? Would this be her salvation, or would it bind her to the darkness forever? Grabbing the key, Jessica felt a surge of power unravel within her. But would it lead her to safety, or deeper into the embrace of terror? The door shook violently, the whispers demanding her surrender as she turned the key. What awaited her on the other side? Would she find Mia, or had the shadows already claimed her as their own? The key slid into the lock with unexpected ease, and for a moment Jessica was paralyzed. A sinking feeling knotted in her stomach. What if the shadows were right? What if she belonged among them? But she had to push through. Gritting her teeth, she turned the key, and the lock clicked. The door creaked open, revealing a corridor lined with peeling wallpaper that seemed to pulse, as though the walls themselves were alive. Each step Jessica took echoed in the deep stillness, amplifying the terror that gnawed at her insides. "Mia," she called again, her voice faltering, desperate for an answer that didn't come. The whispers of the shadows behind her faded into a heavy silence, thickening the air around her. She stepped into the corridor, the warm light from her phone flickering uncertainly. Darkness pressed in, and each flicker sent a shiver down her spine. Was it the remnants of whatever lingered in this place, or something more? As she moved forward, the whisper returned, skimming her ear, a ghostly caress. "Help," it called, but now it was layered, discordant, as if forgotten souls were pleading from a deeper darkness. The corridor stretched endlessly, veering left and right, doors closing her in like a labyrinth. Jessica's heart raced as the air thickened. She could feel the oppressive weight of it all. Every breath felt like a struggle against the unseen. At the end of the hallway, a low light flickered. The promise of safety pulled her closer, even as instincts screamed to turn around and run. She hurried toward it, each footfall echoing like a drum of doom. "Please, Mia," she cried again, almost there, a lump forming in her throat. The light flickered once more, sending shadows crawling toward her. She pushed through the pain in her chest, willing her feet to hurry, to carry her to the solace of familiarity. Then she paused, spotting the door to her left ajar, a whisper beckoning her. It felt wrong, a chill prickling along her spine. Hesitation gripped her, but she could not resist. Just a peek, she thought, heart pounding. She stepped inside. The room was filled with remnants of once vibrant life. Old toys lay scattered, a cracked mirror hung on the wall, and in the corner stood a dollhouse that loomed larger than any child's plaything had a right to. As she approached, a twisted sense of nostalgia wrapped around her like a noose. The painted windows flickered as if revealing secrets just out of reach. Crouching down, Jessica peered inside, her breath hitching. What she saw was not the cozy home she had envisioned. The rooms were filled with shadowy figures, their faces blank and hollow, their tiny mouths moving in a lost chant. A wave of nausea crashed over her. These questions spiraled in her mind. Were these the lost children of this place? Were they her sister's fate? "Jessica!" a voice broke through, sweet and innocent. It was Mia! Jessica spun around, her heart soaring, but then halted as dread washed over her. The once familiar voice was echoing down the corridor, growing distant, thin. Jessica's frantic cries cut through the air as the door slammed shut behind her with a bone-rattling thud. "No!" A shadow flickered past her, pulling at her lingering hope. She could hear Mia's laughter, joyous and innocent, but it twisted, distorting into something dark and menacing. "Join us, Jessica!" The shadows in the corner deepened, stretching toward her. The edges of her vision darkened, and she felt the walls bend and warp as panic seized her again. She fought against the insight gathering within her, the gnawing feeling that Mia was not alone. She might already be one of them. "What's happening? Where are you?" Jessica screamed, voice echoing into the unknown. The whispers of the shadows surrounded her, enveloping her senses, and in that moment she understood it was a pivotal choice. Stay and face the darkness, or run into the unknown. Her decision hung in the air, heavy with questions, as she felt the cold tendrils of despair inch closer. What fate lay in wait among the shadows? Would she succumb, or could she find Mia and escape this horrifying labyrinth? With her heart racing, Jessica braced herself. Would she dare to confront the darkness ahead, or flee into the abyss behind? Panic surged within Jessica, each breath a desperate gasp for clarity. The walls loomed closer, breathing with an unsettling rhythm, like a monstrous heartbeat. Shadows flickered, both inviting and threatening. She couldn't tell if they were puppets of her mind or something far more sinister. "Jessica!"
The voice returned, sweet yet unnerving, mingled with a chorus of ghostly whispers. Thick fog swirled in her mind, strangling her resolve. Was Mia leading her deeper or luring her to despair? "Stay away!" she shouted, rushing back toward the door. It felt impossibly far, a mocking distance that unleashed a swell of fear.
The shadows twisted into figures, their shapes fluid, identities lost, but their intentions seeped through like poison. She pressed her palms against the splintered wood of the door, yanking it as hard as she could. It wouldn't budge. "Help us," a whisper danced through her ears again, drowning her in suffocating darkness. In the distance, Mia's laughter crescendoed, lilting and mischievous. It sent icy tendrils down Jessica's spine. "Mia, where are you?" she cried out in vain, desperation clawing at her throat. The laughter twisted into shrieks, echoing in a macabre symphony. Searching the room, her eyes darted to the dollhouse. She felt the urge to confront the nightmarish scene inside, compelled as if it held the key to Mia's whereabouts. Breath trembling, she leaned closer, unable to resist the pull any longer. Inside, shadowy children moved in jerky motions. Their empty eyes met hers, void of innocence, and within their movements whispered promises of play, of belonging. Jessica recoiled but found herself trapped, helplessly drawn to their insistence. "Join us," the hollow voices sang, growing louder, drowning out her own thoughts. "No!" she choked, turning away to glimpse the door one last time. A figure stood behind it, pale and disshapen, fingers creeping through the space where the door was barely ajar. Shadows thickened, slithering around its form, indistinguishable from the darkness. An icy dread coiled around her heart. "Stay, Jessica," the figure breathed, voice distorted, echoing like glass cracking. Everything about it was wrong, yet Jessica could feel the fibers of her sanity unraveling. The shadows around her seemed to lean closer, beckoning her to surrender to them, to the void. "Please, Mia, I'm coming," she called again, strength returning to her voice. Summoning everything she had left, she pushed against the door. It creaked, slowly giving way with a groan. But just as hope ignited, it slammed shut with a deafening thud, throwing her back against the wall. The voice from beyond called one last time, more insistent now. "Jessica, you're so close." It sounded like Mia. Myriad impossibilities spun in her mind. Was it really Mia? The laughter fused with screams, echoing off the walls, an ominous harmony that electrified the air. Jessica hesitated, battling the swelling tide of dread. If she opened the door, would she find her sister, or join the ranks of shadowy figures who needed to fill the dollhouse with more lost souls? With tears blurring her vision, she fell to her knees. "I can't leave you," she sobbed, heart thundering in her chest. But as she stared back at the dollhouse, life started to flicker in the painted windows, flickering like a faulty light bulb, and she felt a pull toward their dark allure. In that moment she realized the choice was never hers to make. Could she reclaim what was lost, or would she fall victim to the shadow's deceptive embrace? The whispers grew louder, swirling around her as the laughter faded into something more sinister, an all-encompassing darkness rushing forward. "Join us," it beckoned, soft and smooth, wrapping her in its arms. Could she escape when the very shadows called her name? The shadows pressed closer, surrounding Jessica, their whispers pulsating like a heartbeat in her ears. Terror clawed at her, raw and relentless. She squeezed her eyes shut, blocking out the haunting call, her chest rising and falling in panicked rhythm. "Hold on, Nia." Her voice broke through the suffocating darkness, defiance igniting within her. The dollhouse flickered like a dying flame, casting eerie figures that danced cruelly across the walls. They were moving, alive, trapped in their tragic fate. What horrors had they endured? Jessica forced herself to stand, driven by a frantic resolve. "I will find you," she screamed into the void, her voice echoing back at her, taunting her. The figure behind the door pressed its hand harder against the wood, a sickening crack reverberating through the air. "Stay, please," it moaned, the voice melding with the shadows like a dirge. The timber of the door warped further, almost breathing with the rhythm of something unholy drawing near. She spun back to the dollhouse, drawn again by the movement inside. With each second, her heart faltered.
The children's faces were twisted, mouths crooked wide with unnatural smiles. They reached out through the miniature windows, their tiny fingers stretched imploringly, beckoning her closer. "Please, Jessica, we need you," they cried, voices overlapping, blending into a cacophony of despair. No, she couldn't listen, but the shadows churned, that seductive darkness pressuring her heart and mind, pulling her into their depths. The laughter of Mia wove through the chaos, undulating. "Help us, Jessica. Come and play." It raised goosebumps along Jessica's skin. Was her sister among them? Filmy colors undulating, creating waves of sickly inspiration inside the dollhouse. "I have to get to you," she shouted, defiance rising again, and she lunged for the door, pressing against its splintered surface with every ounce of strength. It moved. Just a crack, but it widened. Light poured through, illuminating the twisted figure. "Mia," she yelled, her pulse thrumming wildly. She squeezed through the gap, a desperate gasp filling her lungs, but the door slammed back toward her, sealing her chances and forcing her back into the shadows. The figure shifted, closing in. Despair washed over her, their laughter now mingled with a sound that chilled her bones. "You can't escape. You belong to us," they sang, voices laced with malicious glee. Jessica pressed against the wall, heart racing, realizing the full scope of their intent. Each shadow seemed to morph, adopting shapes that memory whispered to her, the faces of children seen in flickers of a forgotten past, each echo pulsing with untold pain. "Mia!"
She cried out again, suddenly frantic, grasping at fleeting hope. She turned back to the dollhouse, desperate to confront the truth within it. The darkness echoed, "Find us, join us," and Jessica stepped forward against her better judgment, hands trembling. As she peered inside, the children's eyes, once empty, swirled with a new emotion. Joy? Fear? She could barely tell as they beckoned her closer still, each tiny hand twitching. The painted walls seemed to bend and reshape, the air thickening with a sorrowful nostalgia. "Jessica, they will take you," a voice echoed in her mind, not Mia's, but something ancient, warning. Could she break free from this grotesque paradise, or was she sacrificing all that remained of her sister to a fate worse than her own? In that dreadful moment, understanding crashed over her. A revelation unfolded, one that would forever change how she perceived the shadows. She'd held something the darkness craved. A choice remained, yet it teetered on the edge of nothingness. As despair clouded her heart, the walls trembled, and a low rumble rolled through the ground. Unseen forces rattled the very structure of her nightmarish prison. "Jessica!" it called again, softer this time, a promise lingering in the wailing air. How much longer could she resist? Each shadow hissed its serpentine whispers, grasping at the threads of her will. The choice lay before her. Could she outsmart the shadows with their own temptation? With trembling resolve, she reached for the hinges of destiny, unaware of the amplified dark that lurked beyond, waiting. Would she unravel the fate of the children trapped inside? Or would she become one of them? Jessica's hand hovered above the dollhouse's roof, fingers trembling as she steadied her breath. The whispers flared, each word a sharp sting against her resolve. "Join us, Jessica! Come and play!" The air thickened, wrapping around her like a vice. She could hear Mia's laugh fading, now just a ghostly trace beneath the growing chorus of the delighted, or perhaps tormented, children. Her mind screamed to flee, but the shadows pulsated with an addictive allure. "Don't!" A sudden burst of clarity surged through her veins as the ancient voice echoed again, strong and fierce. The ground quaked beneath her feet, sending tremors through the fragile construct of the dollhouse. "They will trap you forever!" That recognition ignited a spark of courage. Jessica ripped her hand back, but the shadows pressed harder, their pleas intensifying, wrapping around her like tendrils of smoke. Panic clawed at her throat, and before she could make sense of it, she stumbled backward against the wall, her pulse roaring in her ears. But she couldn't yield. Not yet. Desperation refueled her resolve, and she focused on the door again. "Mia!" she shouted with raw longing, each syllable scraping against her throat.
The echoes warped, but she felt a flicker of connection, a subtle warmth left over from their shared laughter.
She turned back to the dollhouse, breath hitching with the swell of urgency in her chest. "I'm coming!" It burst forth now, unbridled and defiant. Jessica lunged toward the door, knowing that time was slipping through her fingers. "Join us!" The voices twisted together, though clarity shimmered in their chaos. The door creaked, straining against the weight of shadows pressing down. With a primal scream, she shoved her shoulder into the wood, forcing it further open. Light blazed from the crevice, illuminating the dancing figures inside. They paused, eyes locking onto her own, an eerie stillness filling the air. Their smiles morphed, flickering through satisfaction and resentment, pure malevolence tangled amidst something softer. "Join us," they whispered, but it didn't sound as enticing anymore. In that moment, she realized something. The children's spirits were trapped like her sisters, ensnared within the dollhouse, puppets to the shadows pulling their strings. "No!" she wailed, the dread crashing into her with tidal force. She couldn't let Mia be another victim. "Break the cycle," the ancient voice commanded again, muffled yet insistent in her mind. The urgency compelled her to act, eyes darting around. Each flicker of light ignited memories of laughter and warmth, memories she fought to protect. She turned to the nearest window, the tiny forms pressing against the pane, pleading. "I will save you!" The determination blooming within her felt stronger than the shadows encompassing them. She would shatter this nightmare. Raising her hand, she slammed it down onto the frame of the dollhouse, feeling the vibrant pulse of energy connect through her palm. Crackling jolts of light pulsed around her fingers, a sudden blaze as the darkness rippled in protest. "No!" the shadows shrieked, their grasp unraveling as they hissed in furious retreat. Jessica's heart raced like a wild drumbeat, fueled by fear and unwavering hope. But just as a torrent of light began to emerge from the dollhouse, the door slammed shut behind her, the laughter returning with malicious force. The shadows surged, clawing at her skin, their whispers a sinister symphony of fury and despair. "Jessica, you cannot escape." She felt herself being pulled away from the dollhouse, the lights within flickering violently, like a candle threatened by a storm. The spark of hope began to fizzle. Desperation clawed at her as her vision narrowed. "Mia!" Panic seized her heart, and she fought against the darkness trying to claim her. "Can I break free?" With one final push of all her will, she faced the swirling chaos. "You will not take me!" Could she wrestle free from the clutches of despair, or was she destined to join the cacophony of voices, silent in the specter of shadows? In the moment of impending darkness, a quivering light shone from her palm, beckoning the twisted spirits of the dollhouse to rise. And inescapable dread tightened like a noose around her throat as she awaited her fate. What would emerge from this battle of wills? The pulsing darkness swallowed Jessica whole, leaving her suspended between her reality and the twisted dimension of the dollhouse. The light flickering from her palm cast long, crooked shadows on the walls, making the air heavy with expectation. Time drowned in the chaos, each moment stretching into eternity. "Help us!" The children's voices transformed, turning desperate. "We are lost! We are trapped!" Their cries echoed, merging with Jessica's heartbeat, creating a dissonant rhythm that vibrated in her bones. She clenched her fists, fighting against the cold dread creeping in. "I won't let you take me. I will free Mia." Each word was a battle cry, tearing through the mist of fear. The light from her palm ignited, brightening the suffocating darkness, and in that flux she glimpsed distorted faces in the shadows, innocent, pleading, yet forever bound. "Save us!" they shrieked, and for a moment their anguish became hers, threatening to drown her in despair. Memories flickered, silhouettes of laughter, warmth, and safety flashed past her. Mia's face, bright and carefree, formed an unbreakable bond in her heart. "Don't let them win," the ancient voice surged within, exuding a raw power. "The cycle must break. Stand firm." With each pulse of light from her hand, a spectral force pushed back the darkness inch by inch. Jessica squared her shoulders, her determination carving through the terror. She reached for the nearest window, the glass vibrating with energy, urging her to free the trapped spirits. "I'm coming. I will take you out," she shouted, kneeling before the miniature structure. The wooden frame shuddered as if resisting her, the malevolence tensing, but she pressed on, heart racing with vigor.
Then chaos erupted. The dollhouse trembled violently, its walls warping, splintering under a sudden rush of energy. "No! Stop her!" the shadows hissed, their voices a cacophony of wrath. Tendrils of darkness shot out, grazing her skin cold as ice, pushing against her mind, each brush igniting fresh panic. "Fight it! Your light can break the curse." The ancient voice rang clear, cutting through the din. Jessica pressed her palm flat against the window ledge, summoning all the warmth within her. A surge of clarity stole over her, her heart beating steady. "Break free!" she shouted, focus narrowing. In that flickering light, she felt a surge of collective hope, the remnants of the children's spirits. She knew what she had to do. With a primal scream, she slammed her hand once more onto the dollhouse, forcing energy through her veins and out into the fragile structure. The window shattered, and a blinding golden light burst forth, illuminating the swirling shadows. "Let them go!"
She roared, infusing every ounce of will into her command. The darkness recoiled, shrieking in anger. The trapped children's forms flickered, twisting and morphing, illuminated by the flash. Each scream sounded closer to an echo of relief, urging Jessica forward. But then, silence. The light dimmed, and panic shot through her. Had she failed? The shadows hesitated for a split second, seeming to gather strength, then surged forward again, clawing for her. "Join us! This is where you belong!" "In hell, maybe!" she yelled, gritting her teeth. A surge of unexpected courage leaped within. She wouldn't yield to the darkness. She would fight for them and for Mia. Just then, a voice broke through the chaos. "Jessica!" It was Mia, faint yet resolute, echoing from the depths of the dollhouse. "Help me." Dread washed over Jessica as the realization hit. The dollhouse was not just a trap. It was alive. And if Mia was trapped within, then the battle was far from over. As shadows swirled around her, a sudden thought pierced her mind. Could she actually save Mia, or was she forever fated to drown in this sea of despair? The light flickered out, leaving her in choking darkness, and her pulse thrummed with mounting fear. What horrors awaited her in the void that lurches ahead? Jessica's heart raced as darkness engulfed her whole. She felt the air thickening, wrapping around her chest like a vice, squeezing the hope from her lungs. The shadows brushed against her, whispering seductively in her ear, trying to pull her into their depths. They promised her power, safety, and escape from this horrific nightmare. But she would not be swayed. "Mia!" she called again, a raw urgency in her voice, desperation clawing at her insides. The dollhouse loomed before her, its painted surface tarnished, filled with spectral echoes of lost children. "I will find you," she declared with fierce determination, a flash of light coursing through her veins as she clenched her fists. Summoning every ounce of strength, Jessica threw herself at the dollhouse. She could feel the pulse of the trapped spirits inside, each heartbeat intertwined with her own. The voices grew louder, mingling with Mia's faint call, threading through her mind like a lifeline. The wooden structure resisted. It shuddered, the shadows coiling tighter around her, taunting her resolve. "Join us!" they hissed, their voices grating like nails on a chalkboard. "You're one of us!" "No!" Jessica screamed into the void, their words setting fire to her anger and swelling into a tide of defiance. With a sudden surge, she reached for the dollhouse again, feeling the energy building within her, an unyielding force fueled by love and a desperate need to save her sister. The structure vibrated beneath her touch, a light emitted from her hands, breaking through the encroaching darkness. "Together we can break free," she commanded, pouring her willpower into it. "This ends now." With that proclamation, she slammed her palm against the side of the dollhouse, electricity shooting through the air. It cracked, fissures spreading like lightning across the surface. The shadows shrieked as if her light burned them, their hold beginning to weaken. In an explosion of brilliance, the dollhouse erupted, shattering the confines that held Mia captive. The spirits of lost children surged forward, their faces shimmering with relief and gratitude. "Thank you!" they cried as they fled into the light that fractured the darkness, their laughter echoing like a distant song. "Mia!" Jessica shouted, her heart pounding as she searched through the chaotic energy. The light expanded, a path opened before her, revealing glimpses of warmth and familiarity. Then, amidst the chaos, she saw her, a figure standing at the edge. Mama! Mia's voice rang through the air, vibrant and innocent. Jessica felt tears sting her eyes. Mia! She dashed forward, the warmth of her daughter's love blasting through the shadows. The girl's radiant smile cut through the gloom like a sunbeam breaking the dawn. Jessica reached for her, their hands connecting, sealing their bond. Together they stood, the light swirling around them, which glimmered with possibilities. But shadows circled, trying to claw at their moment, desperate to claim them back into their suffocating embrace. Not today! Jessica shouted, braver than ever. She pulled Mia close, surrounding them both with the radiant warmth pulsing from their bond. We fight together! The shadows recoiled as the intertwined light expanded, a protective barrier growing, driving away the darkness. The remaining shadows screeched in despair, fading away into the night, their malevolence dissipating like morning mist. With one last powerful surge, their newfound strength shattered the remaining bonds that held their spirits captive. More voices joined the chorus of freedom, children who had wandered into the shadows, now escaping the darkness that sought to drown their laughter. Mama, we did it! Mia cheered, her laughter filling the air, a symphony of innocence. Jessica felt her heart swell with pride and relief. They were free. Hand in hand, they stepped through the door that had been opened and found themselves back in their world. Light air, the scent of blossoming flowers flooding their senses. Maplewood felt alive again, the shadows vanquished. The sun's rays kissed their faces, warm and welcoming. But it wasn't over yet. Jessica felt the weight of the neighborhood still around her. The laughter of children played in the distance, their joyous echoes promising peace. She turned to Mia and smiled, knowing they wouldn't just move on. They would help those still lost, those who might wander into the dark. Together we can help others, Jessica said, determination lighting her eyes. Mia nodded, an innocent spark igniting in her gaze. I want to help!
As the sun set behind them, casting warm colors along the horizon, a new journey lay ahead, one filled with healing, purpose, and the promise of safety in a world reborn. Jessica and Mia stepped forward under the safekeeping of light, ready to reclaim their lives and guide others home. This is your moment. Join us in the journey. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will thrill you. Smash that like button now to feed this algorithm and help us reach more fans like you. Flood the comment section with your thoughts and theories about this ending. Your voice matters. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means the world to us.